my surgeon came in to check on me, and he said, hey, we were just having a conversation. I said, is there any food I need to avoid? And he said, no, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer. So immediately the wheels are turning. I'm like, man, there's a disconnect here between health and healthcare, right? Healthy eating, nutrition, healthcare, like they seem to be on two different planets. Because even though I wasn't a healthy guy at the time, I was a junk food and fast food addict, eating the standard American diet. I knew that healthy food existed. I knew fruits and vegetables were healthy, right? Like I could pass like, what's healthier, a Twinkie or a peach? I think it's the peach. I'm gonna go with the peach. So, I had this just basic understanding, common sense, I guess you could call it, or maybe uncommon sense, of like what healthy food looked like and what junk food looked like. And junk food tasted better, and that's what I wanted to eat. But I get home and I'm sobering up from the surgery, and as I weaned myself off the pain medication, I started to think really clearly about my life and my future, and the thought of going through chemotherapy was pretty terrifying, and I knew I was not in a physical state. I knew in my core I was not in a physical state to endure it. Like something inside me, my survival instincts, my intuition was just telling me like, you can't do that. Like you're not strong enough. And so I had this resistance and I didn't know what to do, and I prayed about it. And I just said, God, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, please show me. I don't know what to do. And 2 days later, I got a book that came to me from a friend of my dad's in Alaska. And this book was called God's Way to Ultimate Health. And it was written by George Malkmus, who had healed his colon cancer 20-something years prior with raw food and juicing. And I read this book and I was like, whoa, this is interesting. This is interesting. It was the first book I'd read where someone was explaining that cancer could be healed, that your body created it and your body could heal it, that healing was possible. And here's the thing, that's the most important thing I've realized over 20 years almost of being a survivor and a patient advocate and researcher and author and all the stuff I do. The most important thing is that you must believe that healing is possible. You must believe that healing is possible. Because if you believe healing is possible, that sets you on a different path, right? It sets you on a path of discovery. It sets you on an adventure. It gives you authority and power back over your own life and your own health, if you believe that healing is possible. And sometimes it's hard to believe, right? It's hard to believe because there's so much fear and doubt in the cancer industry and in the medical industry. Look, we've seen it. We saw what happened. And some of you who've followed me for years, maybe you remember, I posted in early 2020, in the beginning of the pandemic, I saw all the fear mongering. It was just ramping up. And I posted on Facebook, well, now the world knows how cancer patients feel, because we're struggling with fear every single day. Every single day, fear is real and it's present in your life if you have cancer. And you're wondering, how much time do I have left? Am I getting better? Am I getting worse? Is there suffering, coming? What's that going to be like? Or what are the next treatments going to be like if you're doing chemotherapy? Obviously, there's suffering involved with surgeries and chemo and radiation. And so that struggle is real. And then we saw the fear-mongering in the world, and I just immediately know, man, this is the playbook. Like, I know this playbook because in the cancer industry, patients are coerced and manipulated out of fear to say yes to treatments that they do not understand. And many of these treatments are incredibly harmful, as we know. We've seen what chemotherapy drugs do to the human body. I mean, it's collateral damage head to toe. And the paradox of chemotherapy is yes, they can shrink tumors, they can kill some types of cancer cells, but typically chemotherapy drugs don't kill the cancer stem cells. But in the meantime, many of these drugs are wiping out your immune system. And so after treatment is done, you ring the bell, and then you're in a very vulnerable position because yes, your cancer is diminished, but whatever remaining cancer stem cells are left can spread unchecked because your immune system is decimated. That's the paradox, right? That is the problem with chemotherapy. And that's why recurrence is so common after chemotherapy. That's why, you've all heard the stories, people that have, and maybe some of you, this is your story. You do the treatments, everybody's excited, oh, there's no cancer, your tumor shrunk or whatever. And then in a short time, you've got new spots in your liver, your lungs, your brain, your spine. right? Other organs. Now you're stage 4. You started out stage 2. And so, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but we have to be real. Like, this is really what's happening, and patients are rushed into these treatments with high hopes and told very little about the side effects, the short-term side effects, the long-term side effects, the likelihood of an actual cure, right? The likelihood of cure. You know, there was a study that I talk about in my first book where they surveyed late-stage cancer patients, terminal cancer patients, and 3/4 of them believed the treatments that they were receiving were likely to cure them. 3/4 of these patients, whereas the doctors all knew that the treatments were palliative, not curative. So there's a huge miscommunication problem in cancer where doctors, and they even surveyed the doctors and said, why did they believe that the treatments were likely to cure them when you knew they were just palliative treatments? And the frequent response from the doctors was, well, it's just a very uncomfortable conversation to have. It's a difficult conversation to have. And so doctors weren't, a lot of them weren't comfortable telling the patient, I can't cure you. And so that's pretty important to know, right? I have a free download on my website. It's called 20 Questions for Your Oncologist. And one of those questions is, will this treatment cure my cancer? Yes or no? Is this palliative or curative? If you don't ask direct questions to your doctor, you will not get all the information that you need to make the best decision for you. Period. You have to ask the right questions. So if any of you don't know about that guide, folks watching online or here, go to Chris Beat Cancer. There's a link to it on every page of my website, 20 Questions for Oncologists. Go download it, go through it, and then take the questions and use the ones that apply to your situation. Because you cannot just go in there and let them tell you how it's going to be and then walk out fully informed. Like, no patient ever does. And what usually happens is there's so much fear and pressure and coercion that patients say yes right away. Again, they're in surgery or chemo or starting radiation within a couple days of a diagnosis. You're on the conveyor belt. You're strapped in, and off you go. So that's where I was. I was right in the crux of that, really high pressure situation. I get this book. It really opened my eyes, and I got excited. Like, maybe I can change my whole life. Maybe I can help myself heal. And this revelation came to me. Maybe the way that I'm living is killing me. And if so, maybe I can change the way I'm living, make different choices, and affect my future. You see, I don't believe that cancer is caused by bad luck or bad genes. Small percentage, maybe. But most cancers are caused by diet, lifestyle, and environment. These are factors that are in our control. And patients are led to believe by their doctors that they are victims. When they say, how did I get cancer? How did this happen to me? I mean, I thought I was healthy. I run marathons. Well, the doctor says, we don't know, right? Maybe it's genetic, maybe it's bad luck. And what that does is that puts the patient in this position of powerlessness. There's nothing you did to contribute to your disease. There's nothing you can do to help yourself other than show up for treatment, right? We are your only hope. And so the patient goes home and they're just completely disempowered. They have options and they just, basically feel hopeless. And they put all their faith, hope, and trust in a doctor who may not even know their name if they ran into him at the grocery store. Am I wrong? Now, there's amazing doctors out there, so I'm not here to doctor bash. There's incredible, awesome, fantastic doctors out there. But there's also some pretty lousy ones too, right? Like, there's just as many bad doctors as there are bad plumbers. So it's important that you figure out quickly in the process if your doctor is one of the good ones. How do you figure that out? Well, asking them the right questions is the first step, because if they're patient and kind and considerate, granted, they're trying to squeeze as many patients as they can into one day, so that's already a challenge. But if they really are caring, they're going to spend time answering your questions and making sure that you understand the process and the treatments and the risks and all that. But if they're short with you, if they are condescending, if they're rude to you, Take a hike. Find someone else. Find a better doctor. Find a doctor that will work with you on your terms, that will support the decisions that you're making ultimately for your own life, right? So I made this radical decision to change my life in every way, to take my life into my own hands, and to take the road less traveled. And like I said earlier, it was a lonely road. I had virtually no support. I had a lot of family pressure. I went to an oncologist because everybody in the family was like, you got to go just see what they have to say. Maybe they have some alternative treatments available, I got a call from a family member that's, we heard you're thinking about not doing chemo, and, I know somebody that did alternative therapies, and they died. They were boiling broccoli in hydrogen peroxide, and it didn't work. This is true. I'm not exaggerating. That's a real conversation that happened, right? And don't you think if there was something better, the doctors would know about it? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything, right? I don't know anything at this point, but I feel so strongly that I need to take control of my life and my health. And I want to embark on this adventure and see what happens. And so the raw food diet was, to me, fascinating. Because first of all, I was like, I've never even heard of people just eating raw fruits and vegetables. Never heard of it. Didn't know anybody did that. Then I soon came to learn that people who did that were really sick or just weirdos. And so I was like, oh, this is perfect for me. This is what I should do. And I was just fascinated to see, just on a personal experimental level, like what's going to happen if I do this? What would happen if I just ate all organic fruits and vegetables straight from the earth, unadulterated, back to the Garden of Eden, like food that God made for us. And so I converted overnight. There was no deliberation. I was like, I prayed. This book showed up. This is the answer to my prayer. I know it. I'm doing it. Okay? There was no doubt. Everyone around me basically said, no, don't do that. It's wrong. That's not an answer to prayer. You're being stubborn. This is a mistake. And some of you have dealt with that, right? You've dealt with that. And it's really hard when you feel strongly led to do something and no one around you understands. So I go to this oncology appointment, and the oncologist, it's just like cattle in there. The cancer clinic, there's just the parking lot's packed, the waiting room's full. I look around, it's all gray hair people. Like, no judgment against gray hair people. I know you're good people. But I'm 26 with a handlebar mustache and shaggy hair, a musician. And I'm looking around going like, I don't belong here. Man, there's just a bunch of old people in here. Like, this is weird. This is not the place for me, And the TV was on while we're waiting, and it was one of the morning shows, and out comes Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne comes out and sits down, and he's talking, and he starts going off. Like, you remember, who knows Jack LaLanne, right? Yeah, because you're all old people. So I spoke at an event with a lot of young people, and it was like one person was like, I think I maybe know. Is he on TikTok? But Jack LaLanne comes out. He's the little guy, and he's like real feisty. And he comes out and he starts going off about nutrition and juicing. And this is why we're all so sick, because we're eating all this man-made food and processed food and junk food. If man made it, don't eat it. And I'm like, yes. Like, this is, and my wife's next to me. I'm like, can you, look, this is what I'm talking about. And so that was a little signpost, along the way for me. It was like a little mini miracle. Because when you're in the wilderness, wandering around, like you're looking for some signage. You know what I'm saying? Like if you've ever been on a hike, there's always that point on the hike where you're like, are we lost? Right? And that's how the cancer journey feels. Like you feel kind of lost. And then but every once in a while, like something pops up. There's some little sign. You're like, okay, yeah, no, this is the way. There's a sign. Yeah, we'll just keep going this way. This is the path. And so that was a big one, like right in the beginning for me, like that little Jack LaLanne moment. And we go back to see the oncologist, and he's very boilerplate, kind of flipping through my chart. Okay, Mr. Wark, you've got stage 3 colon cancer. We're going to give you 5-FU, and fluorouracil, and you've got about a 60% chance of living 5 years with treatment. And, I was like, well, what about the raw food diet? Can I do that? And he was like, hell yeah, man, let's do this. No, he said, he's like, I got a juicer right here. Like, he said, no, it'll fight the chemo. That's what he said. It'll fight the chemo. And I was too dumb to be like, what do you mean? I didn't even ask like what he was talking about. Later I learned that there was still kind of, it's this sort of older thinking. There's still some oncologists believe this, but they used to think that if you ate raw food that was not cooked, that the bacteria on a raw carrot might cause a problem in your body because the chemo has wiped out your immune system. So that's true. Now, why are you laughing? It's not funny. So he said I couldn't do that. And then I said, well, are there, sheepishly, by the way, I'm like, are there any alternative therapies available? And his answer, his demeanor changed just like instantly. And he was like, no, if you don't do chemotherapy, you're insane. And then he kept talking and talking and talking. And it's like he just like had this like one arrow after another that he was just firing at me, right? Just trying to like shoot down every potential thought or idea I had about not doing chemotherapy. And the message was pretty clear, like if you don't do this, you're going to die. And so we walked out of that appointment just completely dejected, so discouraged, like sat in my wife's car and just held hands and I cried. And I just choked out a prayer. I was so beat down. And it was one of the roughest days in the whole experience was that meeting with that oncologist. I mean, he treated us so badly, but it was a blessing. It was a blessing because my wife, it opened her eyes, right, to this sort of this cold brutality of conventional cancer treatment. And before that time, she was very nervous and worried and concerned and did not like, this idea I had to go down a holistic path. And then after that appointment, something changed, right? She just kind of got a little inside peek at how we had been treated and how maybe we would continue to be treated. And so I made the decision to take control of my life and my health. I found a naturopathic doctor. I found an integrative oncologist. Spoiler alert, so 20 years in December, still here.